Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're doing something totally fascinating. We're going to take some of the absolute oldest spiritual traditions in human history and translate them right into the modern clinical languages of science, biology, and psychology. Basically, we're decoding the ancient past using the toolkit of the present. Let's dive in.
Imagine for a second that you suddenly found yourself in the spirit plane. How would you actually prove to your friends and family back on Earth that you were still alive? Well, back in the late 1800s, a really distinguished English scientist named Sir Oliver Lodge asked himself this exact question. He realized that if he just hid a secret document or transmitted a new invention from the beyond, skeptics could easily chalk it up to a lucky guess or telepathy. This little anecdote perfectly sets the stage for our entire journey today, that wild, fascinating intersection where strict, hard-nosed scientific proof collides with the boundless ideas of spiritual existence.
To really wrap our heads around this, we have to zoom way out. Shamanism is mind-bogglingly ancient. We're talking origins dating back up to 100,000 years ago. To put that into perspective, Neanderthals were only supplanted in Europe about 30,000 years ago. Settled agriculture, that's only been around for 10,000 years. Now here is the absolutely crucial thing you have to keep in mind. The modern human brain, our actual physical wiring, is practically identical today to what it was tens of thousands of years ago. Your brain's hardware is exactly the same as a hunter-gatherer's from 100 millennia ago. It's just our cultural software that's had an update.
Here is our roadmap for today. We're looking at the ancient technicians, the quantum reality, the biology of the trance, the first psychotherapists, and finally, the urban shaman. Section 1. The ancient technicians, the roots of ecstasy.
So, what actually is a shaman? The word itself comes from the Siberian Tungusic root saman, which literally means one who sees in the dark. The famous historian Mircea Eliade described shamanism as an archaic technique of ecstasy. You see, these early hunter-gatherers were essentially the very first technicians of the sacred. They weren't just guessing or crossing their fingers. They were using highly specific, completely repeatable techniques to mediate between our everyday physical world and the unseen forces all around them.
Section 2. The quantum reality, physics and the spirit world.
The physicist Gary Zukav really hit the nail on the head when he said, "The dance and the dancer are one." As it turns out, the ancient shamanic view of a fluid, interconnected universe is remarkably similar to the modern physics of quantum mechanics. Both of these perspectives completely reject the idea that the material world is just a static pile of objects. Instead, they see a dynamic, vibrating web of energy where you, the observer, are intimately tied to whatever you're looking at.
What tribal peoples called the sacred web of life, physicists today call QUIP, the quantum inseparability principle. Basically, this means every single particle affects every other particle. The universe is just pure movement. It's literally probability in motion. And here's the real kicker. Quantum mechanics suggests that mere observation, thought, and intent can actually alter matter and energy. Thousands of years before we built multi-billion-dollar particle accelerators, these ancient technicians were already operating on this exact quantum assumption, that human consciousness directly interacts with the physical fabric of reality.
And this perfectly illustrates the overlap we're talking about. Let's look at the void. In modern physics, the void isn't just empty nothingness, it's this infinite space of pure potential. Well, in shamanic terminology, that exact same concept is known as the unknown, or the great mystery. It's the space where literally all things are imagined, created, and ultimately made real in the physical world. The vocabulary is completely different, sure, but the underlying architecture of reality they're describing, it's practically identical.
Section 3. Biology of the trance, anatomy of the energy body.
Let's shift gears and look at the physical body. To really get this, we have to contrast two totally different models of medicine. The Western allopathic model uses extremely warlike vocabulary. It fights, it attacks, it tries to totally eradicate external diseases. The shamanic model, on the other hand, is all about diplomacy. They view a physical symptom as a sign of a much deeper internal imbalance. It's like your physical pain is literally your emotional body tugging at your sleeve, trying to get your attention. To them, dis-ease is quite literally a lack of ease, a disruption in the harmony of your whole system.
So how exactly do they restore that harmony? Well, one of their absolute biggest tools is drumming, and very specifically, drumming at around 70 beats per minute. Our sources point out that this highly specific rhythm is a brilliant way to bypass your constant chattering rational mind. It's not just music, it's an ancient biological hack designed to directly alter your brainwave patterns and induce an ecstatic trance state.
And that brings us to the anatomy of the trance itself. Because these archaic techniques, they trigger real, measurable, anatomical changes in the human nervous system. All that rhythmic hyperactivity from the dancing and drumming triggers a massive flood of endorphins and brain chemicals, which lets the person endure heavy physical strain while feeling total euphoria. Then you have chakras, not as some vague mystical idea, but viewed as literal, scientifically measurable power centers broadcasting human intent. Finally, the trance expands what's called the sensorium, your body's sensory apparatus, allowing you to process reality way beyond the standard 5 senses.
Section 4. The First Psychotherapists. Healing the Mind.
Psychiatrist E. Fuller Torrey pointed out something incredible. There are actually more similarities than differences between a modern psychotherapist and a tribal shaman. It's wild to look at the overlap. What we casually call group therapy today is structurally almost identical to communal voodoo rituals. Modern milieu therapy, where a patient heals within a supportive community, is a direct reflection of the Pueblo Native American practice of clan adoption for troubled members. And that intense emotional catharsis people seek in primal therapy, that is the exact same mechanism driving traditional peyote ceremonies.
Now, this brings up a genuinely massive debate in the psychological field, comparing a psychotic break, like schizophrenia, to a shamanic initiation. Researchers definitely see similarities when it comes to hallucinations, but there is a massive, crucial difference, and that is integration. Someone with schizophrenia is often described as being adrift on an inner voyage without a map or a port. But the shaman is viewed as a sick person who has cured themselves. They went on that terrifying inner voyage, but they successfully navigated it, found a deep inner balance, and then returned to safely integrate that new knowledge right back into their society.
And this isn't just a fringe theory. Works like Healing States by clinical psychologist Alberta Vialdo and Stanley Krippner show a very real, active effort by modern medical professionals to measure and understand these altered states of consciousness. They aren't dismissing them as primitive superstitions. They're treating them as highly sophisticated psychological tools.
Section 5. The Urban Shaman. Ancient Tech for Future Shock.
So how does all this fit into our world today? Because the context has completely flipped. Ancient shamanism was all about tribal survival in a hunter-gatherer world. They used that 70 beat per minute drumming to maintain cohesion with the forest and literally prevent change. But today's urban shaman is dealing with future shock, the absolute dizzying speed of social and technological change in our modern cities. So instead of trying to stop change, they adapt to it. They act as clinical healers of relationships, the relationship between your mind and your body, between individuals, and between us and our incredibly fast-paced modern environments. To pull this off, they reach right back into that 100,000-year-old toolkit, but they apply it with ruthless, modern pragmatism. What works is what matters. They lean heavily into that quantum idea that energy flows where attention goes, using the quantum inseparability principle to actively shape their day-to-day reality. They use the expanded sensorium to find a real sense of life force, even if they're surrounded by concrete and steel. And they aren't weighed down by rigid theology. They simply use whatever psychotherapeutic or biological system brings the individual back into harmony.
Which brings us to a quote that really hits the nail on the head. We live in a world alienated from its sacred dimension. In our hyper-industrialized, constantly online society, a huge number of us feel a deep, profound lack of connection. And that alienation is exactly why people today are reaching back for these archaic techniques of ecstasy. We're all just looking for practical, measurable ways to reintegrate our minds, our bodies, and the world around us.
So, I want to leave you with one final, provocative question based on the physics and biology we unpacked today. If reality truly is a dream that we dream into being, if our focus and our intent can literally alter the physical and psychological fabric around us, what kind of world will you choose to dream next? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this sparked your curiosity and gave you a brand new lens to look at human consciousness. Until next time, keep learning and keep exploring.